Hi there, guys. I wanted to discuss gear acquisition syndrome today. So I feel a bit like a hypocrite, to be honest, off the hop, because recently I've been getting so jazzed about some of the new gear that's coming out, and normally I don't get super hyped over it, but seeing like that A7R4, 61 megapixels, like let's face it, it's a super exciting time to be a photographer. Some of the gear is just crazy at this point. It's bananas. I mean, Sony's got the A1 coming out, 30 frames a second. What is it, 50 megapixel? Like it's wild. It's absolutely wild the point it's getting to. But I just kind of wanted to, as much as part of me doesn't want to, because I do enjoy gear. I think a lot of photographers do. But there's some stuff to consider as well. As I discussed in that first video I made there, I started with film, and I wanted to just discuss some of this. That starting with film was actually a real blessing. It was fantastic because you were forced to slow down. You were forced to learn more with composition, more with metering and with lighting and things like that. And it was because you had to slow down. I mean, I'll show you right here. And this still, Nikon FM, okay? This thing's from the 70s. It will work perfectly fine. Literally, mechanical shutter. Perfectly fine without batteries. The thing is built incredibly well. It's gorgeous. It's phenomenal to use. I just want to bring up the fact, and I'll do other videos on this, sometimes, as a photographer, it will bring out more qualities in you, creativity. It will ask you to dig deeper if there is some limits. So, I'll give you an example. I wish I still had the book. I couldn't find it. One of my favorite books I got as a teenager, Franz Lanting's Eye to Eye. So I'm talking about nature photography here. And he shot for National Geographic, like jaw-dropping. The front extends to close-up of a cougar. It's absolutely stunning, like jaw-dropping. And I was just stunned. And literally that entire book, it's film, and there is pictures of him on the back, literally walking with a 300mm lens up to his, I think, up to about the knees out in Africa. So manual focus lens with, I think, a Nikon FM or an FM2. So these things go up to maybe a thousandth of a second for shutter speed, and they're manual focus. And let's face it, back then you'd also have to deal with lighting and film speed. You couldn't just go, okay, let's change the white balance and you're good to go. You can shoot in any conditions. Like, you had to nail the basics. There wasn't image stabilization. It was, no, go grab the tripod. And by that point, maybe you would have slowed down, or even if, let's say you didn't have a tripod, you would learn really quick how to brace and how to, the rules as far as whatever films, whatever shutter speed, or whatever, for hand holding, whatever focal length you have, that is going to be your minimum shutter speed. Things like that. What was it? The Sunny 16 rule. All these sort of things. I'm just finding, like, there's nothing wrong with it hopping straight into digital, but it can be very beneficial to learn on film, or even as an adjunct to digital. I was just thinking about this. I'll probably do another video that it could enhance your creativity and keep you fresh. Because, I mean, let's face it, like, I love, like, D810 here. Great camera, a ton of technology. I love digital. But there is something that is very nice about reaching for a roll of film and knowing that you have 24 to 36 exposures, that you're like, holy crap, you're not just doing one of these sort of things. And if it is a manual focus camera, I mean, you're going to slow down, you're going to really think, and you're going to have a lot of fun. Chances are it's probably not going to be a zoom you're using. It's going to be a fixed focal length lens, like a prime, so it's going to be very sharp. But let's face it, you're going to think so much more about composition, about lighting, about the subject. You're going to get so much more creative. I mean, and I'm going to do a video on this too, about how you can maximize creativity with zooms and stuff. If you're limited, like there's a 50mm 1.8 on this right now. If you're limited to, and I'm saying limited, but not necessarily in a bad way, if you're going out for the day shooting, you know you've got a 50mm 1.8. you are going to come up with some very creative ideas, some interesting shots, some crouch, like all over the place, moving your body around instead of you're standing in place and zooming to zoom. Sometimes more is not better, is what I'm getting at. I mean, I'm going to link some videos. Was it Sam Cold? No, I don't think it was Sam. It might have been Sam Colder. Anyways, it was a hilarious video on gear acquisition syndrome. I thought it was so funny. All I'm saying is, it's very easy to get caught up in specs, and there was people making incredible, stunning shots, even with this camera, way back to the 70s, 80s. There was even in the 90s, I remember seeing somebody was doing photo shoots, literally Nikon FM, Nikon FM2. That, yes, I'm not going to say the gear doesn't matter, because to an extent it will, depending on what you're shooting. But honing your skills is still far more important. Your creativity, your eye, lighting, composition, subject matter, all this sort of stuff, what you're trying to achieve with that. So those are some of the points I wanted to talk about. And there is another photographer. I'd like to find his video and see if I can link it down below. He mentioned this. I think it's so true. I remember when the first digital camera came out, 1 megapixel. And I think at the time it was like $1,000 or $2,000. But anyways, there literally was people making stunning prints from 1 megapixel cameras, okay? And then it's ramped up over time. All I'm getting at is you don't necessarily have to have the newest and the greatest to be creating stunning results. We get caught up in, it's got 400 some odd focusing points. I remember when there was 1 focusing point. My Lane 2E Canon had 3 focusing points. Before that, I had a Nikon N2020, had 1 focusing point. And I mean, people have gotten to the point of, it doesn't have IAF, I guess I can't shoot with it. Or doesn't have, don't get me wrong, it's great to have some of these other features, but it's not going to be like this a make or break, as far as if you've got your fundamentals down, you can create incredible photographs with just about anything that gets put in your hands. I think it was there was YouTube challenges about that before, where they took a pro photographer and then go and give them like a really cheap camera. Maybe they shot on something that was $8,000, and then they're like, okay, here's a camera that's worth $50, $100. Let's see what you can do. And the shots were still great. So it tells you a lot. Like this D810, this is not brand new. This is not by any means. I mean, look at now, they've got the 850s. The 850 is going to be replaced. Everything's going to be switching over more to mirrorless, all that sort of thing. All I'm saying is, don't be afraid to look at things like used gear. Pay attention to what your needs are, and don't always get caught up in the hype. It can be very easy, and I was doing this recently. Like, I caught myself out on it. It's like, even writing a list of comparing different bodies, and let's face it, it's fun. It's fun to get some new gear, some new stuff. But all I'm saying is, maximize what you have. Like, I shot, literally, the first digital camera I had, a Nikon D5000. I shot weddings on that. I shot some events on that. I shot nature and landscapes and went all in on that thing. I maximized the crap out of that. So you could push that thing to the brink of just like, okay, I know what this can and can't do. And you might be laughing of like, a D5000. I bought that because the way Nikon works is they would put a higher end sensor into a lower end body. So it was a cheap light camera, but it had the sensor of a D300, so it was a fantastic sensor. But yeah, I literally waited to upgrade, and then I made a whopping upgrade. But I guess there's different schools of thought about this. You can start with something like this and work your way up. And I do like hearing this because this made me smile. I heard a photographer the other day that he did this, and it just made me smile. I was like, that's actually kind of cool. You could just go and buy something that is very top of the line and grow into it if you want. And it's kind of my opinion now of buy the gear you want, buy the camera you want. That's what I think I'm going to say. By all means, I sound like I'm contradicting what I was just saying, but I still think it's fantastic to go and shoot some film and still have that there. I mean, you could probably get a cheapy camera, 35mm used, manual focus, maybe $100, $150 now used, and still have a lot of fun. And it might be really good for you and enhance your creativity quite a bit. So when you go back to your digital body, that you're kind of like, oh, you know, and I appreciate this, and you view things differently. It can just be a lot of fun. But yeah, what are your needs? I mean, let's be real, guys. Look at the Sony A1. Who needs 30 frames per second? It sounds insane because it is insane, but it's like at that point, pretty much shooting a movie. I mean, who needs that? I can understand the higher megapixel counts. I love that, and I'd like to really ramp that up. But sometimes I think there is, and I will bring this up. Was it Frono's Photo mentioned it about sharpness of lenses? You could create stunning images with a kit lens nowadays. They're all going to be good. They're all going to be sharp, and people could bash. Yeah, like a kit lens. Seriously, if you take the time to hone your skills, you could maximize the crap out of that and get some stunning, stunning images. Yeah, it is not all about gear. It is definitely, definitely not. It's not all about gear. And keep it in mind that you can get good deals now on things like the full frame lenses and things like that used now that a lot of things are switching to mirrorless. So keep that in mind. You don't necessarily have to have the newest and the greatest and that sort of thing. Yeah, that was almost pretty much the gist of what I wanted to discuss. It is fun, absolutely. You get, I'm going to say, like a new toy, you get your new camera, your new gear, it's fun to use, absolutely. And I'm not knocking you if you want to go out and buy a bunch of gear. I'm just throwing that out there that when it comes to creating great photographs, it's still going to be honing your skills, working on composition, lighting, subject matter, editing, all that sort of stuff. That is the stuff that's going to matter. So something I am kind of wondering now, in my view now, as far as buying new gear, is because things are being updating so much, why not wait until you can make leaps? Like, this is just my opinion, and but what I'm saying is wait for something that excites you. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I'm doing it. Nothing so far in Nikon's new mirrorless line really has me going, wow, that looks amazing. It's kind of like, it's all right. It's okay. I'm just talking about my needs. Go for the camera you want. Go for the gear you want. But you don't always have to be upgrading year after year after year. And once again, as I'm saying this, I'm talking about in general terms. If you are working pro and you're all of a sudden your needs are changing, of like, oh, this client wants a higher megapixel count, or wow, I need significantly more video and I need to update this. Like, you have that, like, pay attention to that, obviously. But you can do so much with so little, is what I'm saying. Like, you literally could, and even with lenses, you don't. I think there's I think it is incredible when you go and you have like a 16 to 35 or 14 to 24, 24 to 70 and a 70-200. That is fantastic. It's all talked about online of like the trinity of lenses and everything. Yeah, that is great, but realize how much you can do with literally a 24 to 120 or 24 to 105 and something like that, and just maximize the crap out of your creativity. Make sure it's good quality lens, but you can do so much if you take gear out of the equation, is what I'm saying at times, where you're going, what can I do with what I have? And you're focusing so much more on, maybe there's a trip you take, maybe there is a new subject you're thinking of, and just come up with ideas, and you're in the moment. It's not, oh, you mean I don't have that 70 to do under 2.8? How am I possibly going to survive and shoot this or that? It's kind of like, maybe just find a way. And I mean, yeah, some of the shots I've gotten of wildlife when I wasn't even using longer lenses and just being creative, I was really impressed with. Yeah, it obviously depends on your needs. Just, I guess, try not to get caught up in the gear. Try not to get caught up in the gear too much, that it's not the be-all, end-all. I will do more videos that break this down a little more. That being said, when when the skills are there and the foundation is there, you're really maximizing your creativity. You know exactly what you can do. Yes, it does help if you make sure you have the high quality lenses, high quality gear. If it's digital there, that it's very good quality sensor, that sort of thing. But I think we have all seen people out there, photographers out there, who have very expensive gear that you look at their portfolio or some of their pictures, and it's kind of like, you wouldn't know necessarily. So yeah, try not to put too much emphasis on gear. Yeah, I might leave it there. Comments and questions down below. I'd love to hear from you. I know it is an exciting time, 2021. I mean, there is some jaw-dropping cameras that are coming out. But I guess I'm just looking at, do you want to get caught up in like a hamster wheel of how often are you going to be upgrading your gear? Like, look how often guys like Sony are upgrading bodies. Are you going to be consistently just, I need to have the newest and replace? I mean, lenses are always a super wise investment. Super wise investment. So you can invest more in the lenses instead of necessarily flipping the camera or getting a new camera all the time. But it might even just enhance your creativity if you're focusing less on the gear, is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Once again, you're going to know your individual needs. I'm just throwing this out there as an opinion that I found to be very, very helpful. It can be so easy to get caught up in just wanting more for gear. You can even just look at what your needs are, and as it comes up, like what I've been trying to do with camera bodies is wait till I hit the limits of it. When it gets to the point where it's almost like a nagging limit of, oh wow, that height, wow, look at the noise at the higher ISO, and you're starting to shoot higher ISO, and it's just getting on your nerves of like, oh man, that's frustrating that's happening. Or you're doing maybe photographing birds, and the focus tracking your camera is just lagging and missing shots, and you're going, okay, this is frustrating. This is getting frustrating. I want a little more speed, maybe more frames per second, or something. And I never thought I'd see the day, but I am actually getting a little nitpicky with this guy. Aluminum tripod, hiking around with it. I do want to switch to, say, carbon fiber fairly soon. But once again, I've had this for, over 12 years, easily over 12 years, and it's only fairly recently where I'm like, that's a bit of a pain in the ass. I want to lighten the gear way up. So yeah, maybe you can wait until it becomes like a need, where you're going, you know what, I feel like I've hit a limit. If you're doing nature and wildlife, which I love, there will come a time when you're like, wow, I need more reach, especially if you're doing birds and things like that. You're going to need more reach. You're like, oh wow, I've hit my limit. Maybe 300 millimeters isn't long enough. I would like to see what I could do with like a 200 to 500, or, I was taking this landscape a 24 to 70. It's not quite wide enough. I think I'd like to see what a 16 to 35 would look like, or things like that. Maybe kind of doing it that way. That's kind of how I'm going about doing that. Waiting till the need arises. Because it can be very easy to just go out and just buy a ton of gear. And I have seen examples of that, where like I was saying, where somebody has every bit of gear under the sun, and it's not really reflected in their photography, and it's kind of like, what's going on here? That being said, you all have free will. You all do what you're gonna do, buy what you're gonna buy. I've got nothing against you, nothing but love. If you want to go out there and buy some really, let's say, some fancy gear, you just feel like having some great stuff. There's always that. If you feel like having it, you enjoy what you're doing. I was thinking about this earlier when I went on a walk. If you were getting, I don't know, maybe you're getting into photography and something in you is like, I want one of those pro level bodies. I don't know. We'll say arbitrary thing like a Nikon D, like a D6 or something like that. You're like, I don't care. Whatever. I want that body. Good on you. Whatever. If you want it, get it. By all means. I'm not gonna knock you for it. You can grow into it. That's what I'm gonna say. You can grow into it. But once again, you don't necessarily have to be upgrading all the time. I will throw this out there as the last little thing. When you've got things like the Nikons, what's cool about that is you can go and take things like these manual focus lenses, the old school AIS lenses, and you can go and use them on that, so you're not even necessarily getting newer lenses, and you can use those on landscapes and things like that. So once again, like, what do you have? How can I maximize what I have? I guess that's the point I want to stress. Maximize what you have before you decide to go and upgrade. I mean, do you have what is it? The flash I've got, was it the SB700? It's not the top of the line Nikon, but I've yet to reach a situation where I'm like, I really feel like I need to go higher on this one. I haven't reached that. It might be different for you, but I just find focusing more on the technical side, get better with the editing, get better with the composition, the subject matter, all that sort of stuff. I mean, I know I said it in another video, but about some of the stuff I was looking at buying, you really could look at, okay, how much am I looking at investing in this camera gear? Okay? And I'm only speaking about nature photography when I'm saying this, in this particular point. Look at how much you're willing to putting in. Is it going to help you that much, or will you be better off spending it on, say, a trip somewhere where there's phenomenal subject matter? You could take the gear you already have and just photograph the crap out of it. Maybe you upgrade your card so you can hold more. You do a great job with editing, and you're like, wow, this is absolutely stunning. Look at some of the shots I got. As opposed, like, if it comes down to you getting out there and getting more shots because of a great subject matter, maybe take a trip, things like that, compared to upgrading your gear, I mean, to me that's kind of a no-brainer. I'd go with the trip. Yeah. Okay, that's my opinion on this. I'll leave it there. Comments, questions down below. Sorry for rambling and jumping all over, but I don't know. This was kind of coming to me. I wanted to discuss this. So, yeah, I think I'll leave it there, and you have a fantastic day.